Hello, Book 2. This is another Poetry Thursday, and today I'll be reading John Keats' Ode to a Nightingale. Ode to a Nightingale. My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past, in lethe words had sunk. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thy happiness, that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beech and green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. Oh, for a draught of vintage, that hath been cooled a long age in the deep delved earth, tasting of flora and the country green, dance, and provincial song, and sunburnt mirth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south, full of the true, the blushful hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim, and purple-stained mouth, that I might drink, and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. Fade far away, dissolve, and quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known, the weariness, the fever, and the fret here, where men sit and hear each other groan, where palsy shakes a few sad last gray hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies, where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden-eyed despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his pards, but on the viewless wings of poesy, though the dull brain perplexes and retards. Already with thee, tender is the night, and happily the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry fays. But here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs, but, in embalmed darkness, guess sheets sweet wherewith the seasonable month endows the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild, white hawthorn, and the pastoral eglantine, fast fading violets covered up in leaves, and mid-May's eldest child, the coming musk rose, full of dewy wine, the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. Darkling, I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath. Now, more than ever seems it rich to die, to cease upon the midnight with no pain, while thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy. Still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain, to thy high requiem become a sod. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. No hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self-same song that found the path through the sad heart of Ruth, when, sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. The same that ofttimes hath charmed magic casements, opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul's self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu. Thy plaintive anthem fades past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now 'tis buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision, or a waking dream? Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? So, Walter Jackson Bate called this John Keats' greatest poem, or at least his greatest ode. And you can see why. I mean, just the length alone gives him the space he needs to let his full imagination apply itself and all the invention that it brings. It's 8 stanzas. Each stanza is 10 lines long, and there's the rhyme scheme A, B, C, D, E, C, D, E. And the 8th line, well, the rest of the lines are in pentameter. The 8th line has 4. Is a tetrameter. It only has 4 meters. So I just want to go over every stanza. I want to talk about what I like about it, or maybe what you don't like about it, or kind of what Keats is doing in this poem, technically. So, in these first couple lines, he wants to convey the effect of the taking an opiate, right? Of this feeling that's like taking an opiate. So we're gonna have this slow, lulling meter, as if like you're half asleep, like you're sleepwalking, just waking up. And how he does this is by he uses trochees. For example, my heart aches. So you have 2 stressed syllables right next to each other, all in one line, and then you have in a drowsy numbness pains. Drowsy, I mean, that first syllable is, I mean, there's long vowels, and it's a particularly long vowel, plus that second syllable in that word drowsy is shorter than a regular syllable. And right after that, so you have 2 stressed syllables spaced out between a very small, lightly pronounced syllable. So drowsy, numbness, pains. And then ness is also, I mean, it's unstressed, but it's also particularly short syllable. And so you have 3 stressed syllables very close to each other. So it really stops the flow of the line. It really slows you down when you pronounce it. So my heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains. It's like you got pushed through. It's like you're pushing through mud. Pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk. And so hemlock is another one. Hemlock is naturally a trochee where you have two syllables that are equally stressed. Like the word, it's like words like doghouse, like those compound words like doghouse and things like that. So hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past, and lethe words had sunk. And so in the 4th line, when you place a caesura after the 4th syllable, you get a diminishing effect for the rest of the line. It's like it slowly winds down. And this helps achieve the effect he's trying to get in this line, because the last word is sunk. It's as if we're slowly sliding down, and sunk is the bottom, like the bottom of the ocean. 1 minute passed, and lethe words had sunk. It's as if we're lethe words, like we're flowing off into the river, slowly sinking. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beeching green and shadows numberless, singest the summer of full-throated ease. So here, Keats popularized this concept, and because he gave it a name, he called it negative capability. And it's just this idea, you can also call it self-annihilation, this kind of purposeful destruction of the ego to completely get rid of your whatever self-identifying characteristics or feeling, and try to completely sympathize and become the object that you're talking about. And in this case, he's thinking about what the feelings of that bird is. Although they can't speak human language, he's trying to envision himself as the bird, or picking up on certain signals or aspects of the bird's song that he can sympathize with, that will tell a little bit about the bird's inner life. So just by this song, he automatically feels that the bird is happy when he's singing, being too happy in thine happiness. singest of summer in full-throated ease. So he can hear, picking up from hearing the song, not certain aspects of like what it sounds like melody wise, but like the particular amount of effort that the bird puts into the song. He hears that there's no straining when the bird sings its song. And we can think of, I mean, and it's all the more emphasized when we think of this small little bird with it has such a loud voice, how light of small light this little bird is, so light that it can fly. And yet here it sings and sings for hours on end with completely new and varied melodies and songs, as if it didn't take a second thought, to just does it automatically. And here's I think a particularly musical, at least musical wise, variety, pleasing couple of lines. In some melodious plot of beach and green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. So you have these internal rhymes. You have in some melodious plot, and with melodious and shadows of beach and green, those two right next to each other. Some melodious and a numberless, singest of summer in full throat, that close proximity of what do you call it, alliteration, summer. So there you have the short U sound with numberless summer. Full, there you go again, another short U sound. Full-throated ease. And now we're off into the second stanza. Now this is all him reflecting on the joys of drinking. I guess in this case it would be wine. Wine is a popular, it's like the effects that it has for artists or for people in general, that kind of, it buries your inhibitions and you feel like you can do whatever you want. You feel like you're capable. You're capable. All those little anxieties or insecurities kind of fly away, and now you feel like you can finally be yourself and really take in life for what it's worth. Obviously, the dangers of that is A, addiction, but B, you lose your sense of judgment, and so you kind of just fly off the handle, fly off your fancy. Particularly, in this aspect, I'm talking about when you're creating, and you just think whatever comes to mind is good. You know what I mean? That's why I think Ernest Hemingway said, it's good to write drunk, but then you have to edit sober, which I think it's better to write sober and edit sober, but anyway. So here he talks about the joys of the drinking wine. Oh, for a draught of vintage that hath been cooled a long age in the deep velvet earth. So you notice the effect, and not calling it like a chilly draft of vintage, but a draft of vintage that has been cooled. I mean, it illustrates like the process of cooling, and with that time that it takes, it reflects the time of cooling. Cooled, something that's been cooled, it takes a certain amount of time. That reflects the time of the bottle being in the deep velvet earth. And then that, even those descriptions, deep velvet earth, it's kind of like the way you even pronounce it, like deep velvet earth. I feel like I start from the middle of the mouth and work all my way up to the front, as if like that kind of progress is like kind of mimics the progress of deeply delving into the earth. Tasting of flora and country green, dance and provincial song, and sunburnt mirth. I love sunburnt mirth. I think that's just a great illustration. I mean, it's happiness in the sun. You can think of people, dancing, spending time outside, and you're happy, and like the effects of the sun and sunburnt mirth. Full of the true, the blushful hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim. I like the beaded bubbles wink. Think of like beaded bubbles, like the shape of your mouth that it makes, beaded bubbles like an O, like a bubble, then winking. Your mouth kind of like flattens out, like as if the bubbles popped. And he even gives a little as if the wine is tempting you or teasing you or enchanting you to drink in, to enjoy it. The beaded bubbles aren't popping, they're winking at him. Like there's a kind of affection that it feels for the drinker, and in turn the drinker to the drink. purple stained mouth, that I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. So these next few lines, I mean, he's trying to fade away off into what he knows, what kind of alcoholic fueled revelry that you can be taken off on. But then he's always brought back to reality and quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known. And here, this is reality. This is the fact of death, the fact of suffering, the weariness, the fever, and the fret. Here, where men sit and hear each other groan. I like the weariness, the fever, and the fret. The weariness, just the slow time, especially if you've worked a long work week from the beginning to the end, just you're slowly wearing away. And in someone's lifetime, you slowly decay. I mean, you slowly get more and more tired, less and less energy. The fever, how like in certain moments, even within weeks or within days of fever, the kind of it's super excited, passionate, or mad, or angry, or distraught. Just like times when we lose that ability to we lose the ability of perspective, and we become too much of the moment, and we lose ourselves. And the fret, you can tell the fret as in those daily routine things that you always have to take care of. The fret, the people, the gossiping, the people, constantly calling or texting you, or the things that are going on. So if you ever, turn on the news or read the newspapers, the fret, the constant agitation. Here, where men sit and hear each other groan, the constant complaining. I think we can all agree we hear a lot of that. Where palsy shakes a few sad last gray hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies. That last line, where youth grows pale, spectre thin and dies. I mean, if you know anything about John Keats' life, that can be a reference to the last few moments of his youngest brother's life, Tom. He had tuberculosis, and John spent a lot of time at his bedside. And unfortunately, tuberculosis is highly contagious, so he picked up the disease while he was taking care of his brother. And that's ultimately what took his life in the end. But, so that has a particular resonance. But also, it's just a general fact where, like, people, even after, even so much, so you can talk about how life might be full of pain, but some people don't even get the opportunity to live their full life, and it's taken too early. And technically, the effect that he gets in that line, the slow, you see where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies. Every where youth grows pale, that's a certain length, and spectre thin, that's a little bit shorter, and dies, that's the shortest. As if you kind of imagine like a taper or a candle like slowly dying out, slowly flaring, and then the glow slowly fades away. Where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden eye despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. This is where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden eyed despairs. Leaden eyed, I really like that. That kind of like certain despairs or certain unfortunate events just like completely jade you and completely not for temporarily at least, your kind of conception or your perception of the world makes everything seem like surface level. And leaden eyed, it's like that glazed over look, and it's just, it's just that spark of life is gone, and you're kind of settled and kind of doing things like monotonously, automatically. You're not really thinking. Where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, right? The temporal, how temporary beauty is. It's not always there, and that's a good thing that it's not always there, because then we would quickly grow tired of it through habit. But it's something that if you're paying attention, you see it. But as you see it, it's almost like you can only snag it for a moment or two, and once you become aware of it, it's already on its way out. It's already gone. Or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. As if we can't even appreciate beauty. Even after it's gone, we can appreciate it, but only for a certain amount of time. And then other things start flooding in, whether it be life or personal life, or the world around us, that grabs our attention and demands us to be somewhere else. New love pine, Yeah, so away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his parts, but on the viewless wings of poesy. So now he pushes away the drink. He realizes that's kind of a fanciful, kind of an artificial way of interacting with life or appreciating what life has to give us. On the viewless wings of poesy. Viewless, viewless. I think first it means kind of the height, like when you're reading poetry, the heights that it can bring you to, you don't really see it. I mean, like what you see and experience in life informs it, but it's really at the end of like something in a pleasure in your imagination, right? Um, Viewless, so you can't really see it. It's kind of something that you just feel, that you feel and you imagine the images and you feel, and you can experience like that. And a viewless, it's not. You can spot it out and be like that right there. It's kind of something that's appreciated eternally. Though the dull brain perplexes and retards. I like to think the dull brain, he's talking about like the intellect, that part of our thinking that constantly wants to categorize, label things, and separate things, make things nice and even. This is good, this is bad, this is yes, no, up, down. And whereas the ultimate truth of things is very messy, amorphous, ambiguous. It's kind of intuitively, whereas like that's what's the word for it? I think Keats used the word cognitive, but you know what I mean. People who seem to always have an opinion, a strong, that kind of thinking that leads you to have a strong opinion on everything and makes you cast out things. You know, when something's good, everything about it is good. When something's bad, everything about it is bad. When really the reality is that there's a silver lining in everything. There's a lot of good even in the illest things. So, um, so already with thee, tender is the night, and happily the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry fays. But here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. Here again, there's that dichotomy between kind of the heights that poesy can lead you to, but you always got to come back down. You got to come back to reality, you know? And something I can't help it. And I feel like there's even in that kind of height of poetry that he labels here, already he's already with the bird, he's already on the viewless wings of poesy. And then as if to illustrate that fact, he says, tender is the night, and happily the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry face, which is like not a good line. I mean, you know what I mean? There's a lot better lines like which we'll get to later, but I was it reminds me of Endymion and some of those like the beauties, the kind of the traditional, the conventional, the kind of, it doesn't really evoke anything that you can really match to your own experience. It's kind of like, it's like a conventional thing to see it as a queen and as a female thing, and then as the stars as like fairy. It doesn't really have, it doesn't breathe. It doesn't have a lot of reality to it, right? And as if like he knew that right there. But here there is no light, right? Versus the sky and earth, versus the heights of poesy, and here the reality, the day to day. Save what from heaven is with the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways, as if those short trip heights are little like gusts, that like those little heights of poetry that we reach are thanks in part due to these gusts that come from heaven, that blow through our days with the breezes, and it comes when the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. And then here's another beautiful passage. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, but what soft incense hangs upon the boughs. Do you see? He take the aroma or scent of something, soft incense. So now we've got the touch of the incense as if it's laid upon our nose, right? You smell it. It doesn't smell hard. It doesn't sound stiff or icy. It's soft, right? It's gentle. It's like, it's like the smell of new laundry, fresh laundry. Soft incense hangs upon the boughs. It's almost heavy, palpable, like you can almost see it clouding around the trees. And I think this is This is something unique about Keats, I think, in his poetry, and that, I mean, it was done before him and it's imitated after him, is that he joins he joins senses together to just emphasize the effect that you get, right? So we're not smelling the incense. He's given the tactile to a scent. But in embalmed darkness, there it is again, embalmed darkness, as if the darkness is like enclosing us, right? It's as if like we're in, like as if the shadows, the darkness is almost palpable. And so he goes off on a list of the flowers that he enjoys. And look, fast fading violets cover up in the fast fading violets. There's an example of that beauty which cannot keep her lustrous eyes. And when you think of it's also commonly described like when flowers bloom, the little spot in the middle of them, people call it's been called like the eye of the flower. You can connect it that way. The murmurous haunt of flies on summer's eve. That's a nice little, you hear them, they're not particularly talking or singing in your ear, they're murmuring, matches the sound that they make. And then here also, again, talks about the futility, almost futility of poesy, futility of art, futility of the beauty against the fact of death, against the fact of our mortality. Even if, the bird is pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy, during that time, he is still wishing, he's still calling death's soft names in many mused rhyme, and wishing he'll take into the air his quiet breath to cease upon the midnight with no pain. And then he imagines after that happens, still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain, because he's gone, to thy high requiem become a sod. And as if see now this sound, the song of the bird now becomes something, it's not a happy song anymore. Now it becomes his requiem as he passes away. And in here's, I think, the height of the poem, in my opinion, the climax, the best lines. He's getting that wide perspective, right? He's thinking outside of himself and his point in time. And now hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. We're in the back, in ancient days by the highest and the lowest. This is something that's appreciated by all of humanity. Perhaps the self-same song that found the path through the sad heart of Ruth, when, sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. Ruth, one of the early Israelites, stood in tears amid the alien corn. I mean, you can imagine, amid the alien corn. I mean, the effect that the corn has, the loneliness that she feels, that it's corn that she's never seen before, corn that she's not familiar with. It's alien corn. It's almost hostile to her presence, or stood in tears amid the alien corn. And then we switch to something a little bit more uplifting. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements, opening on the foam of perilous seas and fairy lands forlorn. I mean, it's still fantastical, but it's much more close. It's just full of that magic. And imagine that. I mean, imagine like a stained glass window, with those diamond iron gratings. You slowly creak it open, right off to a garden near the sea. And now what comes trickling with the breezes blown is the song of the nightingale. And its charmed magic casements is almost given some kind of extraordinary quality, as if the window itself invited the bird to sing, opening on the foam of perilous seas. So some faraway distant land, perhaps perilous seas that's being seen right above a cliff. In fairylands forlorn, right? Forlorn. Of fairyland that we wish to be at, fairyland that we missed, that might have been at once or experienced, in our childhood or in a more youthful imagination, and now that we, yearn for. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell. And if you think about, I mean, some people might say this is artificial. He's just saying that forlorn. The very word is like a vowel. I mean, if you say it forlorn, 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 and then you think of a bell, like when, especially when it has a double ringing. First it's two of the same uh, vowels, but with different sounds. So it can end at different lengths, so it kind of matches the sound of a bell. How the second ring um, extends and echoes forlorn, and it's kind of a forlorn. I mean, it just sounds sad, right? And just like a bell can sound sad, like it can be a knell. To toll me back from thee to my soul self. No, now he's coming back from those fairy lands, he's coming back from that vision. I do. The fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf, right? Fancy as if it's again, it's like whether it's alcohol assisted or not, it's that kind of fantastical daydreaming that has really no connection to reality. He said it's not as, you know, cannot cheat so well because there's always a constant reminder of you're in reality. This is a daydream and here's actual life. She cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. And perhaps fancy, um, perhaps you could see the bird as a representation of fancy and how it's kind of cheating him into visions through the song, into visions of fancy. Thy anthem fades past the near meadows. Now we're going off and back into the distance, as if the bird itself has flown away, right? It's only stayed there for so long, and now it flies away, and with it, the song is carried off. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? So now we end on that question, was there any truth into that? Making it a vision, like a sincere, authentic vision into some kind of ultimate truth? Or was it a waking dream? Was it some kind of, we've all had this where you're like zoning out, you're not paying attention, you're off somewhere else. And so he thinks there's something false and artificial in that, but he wants a more authentic vision. Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? Right? He's almost on this. Do I wake or sleep? Is it true or false? I mean, he's on that, and we don't. Right? I mean, I think the answer to that question is it is a vision. I think if you can feel the truth into the poem, that'll give you the answer. But he himself doesn't know but that itself, like the ambiguity, is itself a truth. You see what I mean? You don't have to have it completely all decided. I think that's all I have to say about the poem. I hope you enjoyed listening to me rant about the poem and talk about the things I liked about it. And yeah, thank you for watching.